Hi everyone. We will continue chapter 33, lesson 3, the senses. We're going to talk about different types of senses that we have. As you all know, the senses are what allow us to perceive the surrounding world around us. We have many types of senses we're going to discuss during this lesson. First, we will start with taste and smell. They are mentioned together because they are associated with each other. First of all, taste and smell are associated with the mouth and nose. In the mouth, we have the taste buds. Taste buds detect combinations of chemicals that we identify as. We can identify the sweet, the sour, the salty, and the bitter. Okay, here. So, as you can see in this figure here, in the mouth we have the taste buds and other sensory neurons which are sensitive to chemical substances. They are stimulated by chemical substances. Whereas in our nose we have the olfactory nerve receptors. When we say olfactory, it means these are associated with the nose. They are also associated with detecting chemical substances that are entering our nose from the air. We are smelling. If you see anything or any type of food that you're not familiar with, first of all, you're gonna smell it. Smelling it as if you are tasting what's in this food. What allows you to perceive this nerve impulse is the olfactory nerve receptors. Olfactory pulp and the olfactory nerve that is transmitting this nerve impulse to the cerebrum exactly to a position or a lobe in the cerebrum called the temporal lobe. It's not required from you. So signals from these receptors work together to create a combined effect in the brain. Combined effect, why they said combined? Because both taste and smell, they transmit impulses to the same position in the brain as in the cerebrum, exactly as I said, to the temporal lobe. Okay, great. Let's move on to the sense, the second sense we're going to discuss in this lesson, which is the sight, vision. Here we have the structure of the eye. Okay, a transverse section of the eye showing us the different structure that is found in the eye. Let's start from zero. Okay, from outside, light, the reflection of light, the object that reflects light. Okay, this electromagnetic wave that we perceive with our eye first hit the eye from outside through a transparent layer called the cornea. The cornea is a transparent and translucent layer found in the outer part of the eye in contact with air. For your information, the cornea is the only tissue in our body that is not innervated with blood vessels to ensure that it remains transparent and not blocking sunlight from entering to our eye. So first of all, the light hits the cornea. Since the cornea is transparent, the light will go and move on to the fluid that is giving the cornea this concave shape. This fluid is not mentioned in the book. It's called the aqueous humor. The aqueous humor is the fluid that ensures the cornea to have its concave shape, because the shape of the cornea is very important in concentrating the light at a specific point inside the eye, exactly at the retina, which helps also the lens. Most people have a misconception. They think that the lens, the natural lens in our eye, is found here outside. They are wrong. This is the cornea. The lens is inside. The lens is inside. This is the lens. Just behind the aqueous humor, we have the pupil and the iris. The iris, guys, is the colored part of the eye. Okay? Which is made up of smooth muscles, which allow the pupil, which is only a hole inside the iris, this is the pupil, to either constrict or dilate. The question here is, when does the pupil constrict or dilate? Depending on the intensity of light, and also depending on which nervous system is dominating over our body. Either the sympathetic, as we learned, or the parasympathetic. But here, if the intensity of light is high, as if you're looking at the sun directly your pupil will constrict, the iris will constrict the pupil and decrease its diameter to allow it to decrease the amount of light entering the eye. If you are sitting in a room with dim light, directly your pupil will dilate because of the action of the iris, increasing the diameter of the pupil, allowing more light to enter to allow you to see in dim light. So this is the sole purpose of the pupil and the iris, to control the amount of light entering the eye, preventing the damage of the tissues found, especially the nerve tissues found in the retina, because of high intensity of light. Okay, let's complete. Directly under the iris, we have the lens. The lens, guys, is also a transparent tissue which allow to concentrate the light at a specific point inside the eye, allowing to form an image, that this image will be perceived in the retina, and the retina will send signals through an optic nerve to the cerebrum also, especially to a lobe called occipital lobe, also not required from you. So the lens, as you can see, is connected to cells on opposite sides, on the north and south poles, if we can say, of the lens, which control the concavity of the lens, adjusting the lens to allow the human eye to see from a short distance or from a long distance. That's why, guys, when we're reading a book, looking at a phone, working on the phone for a long period of time, your eyes get tired. Okay, your eyes get tired because they are adjusting the lens to allow you to see from a short distance. And when you look at a long distance, you will these muscles, these smooth muscles, will adjust the lens again to allow you to see at a long distance. So the light cross the lens and enter. Here we have another type of fluid which giving the eyeball its shape, which is larger than the aqueous humor. It's called the vitreous humor. The vitreous humor, guys, ensure the positioning of the lens, giving the eye its round shape, and it is transparent, allowing the light to enter and reach the retina. Okay, in the retina, guys, we have a retina that is found here. We have the in the retina, we have the nerve receptors that are stimulated by the light. They are stimulated by the light and different wavelengths of light. We have two types of cells found in the retina, nerve cells, called the cones and rods. Rods and cones. Rod and cones. Rods and cones in the retina provide light sensitivity and information regarding the color. Okay? Rods are light sensitive cells that are excited by low levels of light. So if you're entering a room with a dim light, your rods will allow you to see in the dim light. The cones function in bright light and provide information about color, allow us to see colored vision. This is all regarding the sense of vision supported by the eye. It's required from you to memorize the structure of the eye, the function of each structure. Oh, I forgot. After receiving the light, the cones and rods will be stimulated depending on the light intensity, in which condition we are present, in dim light or in bright light, and they will generate a nerve impulse and action potential that will travel through an optic nerve to the cerebrum, to the occipital lobe. This is all about the sense of sight and the eye. It's required from you to memorize the structure of the eye and the function of each structure. Okay, let's move on to the next sense, which is the sense of hearing and balance. Hearing and balance. It's very important to know that these two senses are associated with each other. Okay, so let's move on to hearing. First of all, let's start with hearing, guys. As you know, hearing is due to sound that our ear receives. Sound is a mechanical wave caused by the vibration of air particles. Let's start from the outside first of all. So here we have the vibrations of air particles, a wave entering the ear. The first type of tissue, so it will enter through the ear canal. Okay, the ear canal. The first tissue that the sound wave will hit is the tympanium. The tympanium, or the eardrum that is found in the outer ear, will vibrate. It's sensitive to vibration, it will vibrate. The eardrum is connected to three bones: the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The malleus, the incus, and the stapes. They are also named hammer, anvil, and stirrup. So these three bones that are found in the middle ear are the tiniest bones in the human body. Their role is to amplify the vibration and to transmit these vibrations to a structure called the cochlea. Okay? Structure called the cochlea. And this structure is a snail-like structure called the cochlea, where the stapes, the last bone, touch the cochlea and transmit the vibration is called the oval window. So it is the place where the stape touches the cochlea and causes the cochlea to vibrate. So the vibration reached the cochlea after amplifying them through the malleus, incus, and stapes. What's inside the cochlea which allow us to hear? Inside the cochlea in the inner ear is a very important hair-like structure, hair-like cells. So this is the cochlea, let's say. Okay, this is the cochlea, the snail-like structure. First of all, the cochlea is filled with fluid. And these hair-like structures that are coming out of the inner wall of the cochlea, okay, they are nerve endings, nerve receptors. They contain what's called mechanoreceptors, okay, that respond to different frequencies of vibrations. When the sound wave reach the stapes and cause the vibration to the cochlea, the fluid in the cochlea will start to move in a back and forth motion. Back and forward motion. Okay? This motion, so this is the fluid inside the cochlea, it's moving back and forth, allowing the hair cells to do what? To move with the fluid. Since these hair cells contain receptors, mechanoreceptors that respond to vibrations, they create a nerve impulse that is associated with a specific frequency coming from the sound wave, and these nerve impulses will be collected from the cochlea through a nerve called the auditory nerve. So the auditory nerve is what transmits impulses from the cochlea in the inner ear to the cerebrum. Allowing us to receive these sound waves and interpret them in the brain by the interneurons to allow us to hear, to allow us to acquire the sense of hearing. The second sense that is also associated with the ear is the sense of balance, which is very, very important. So let's move on to the balance. Okay, here. Balance. It's a new idea for you. Here, the balance that is associated with the ear. So, if you noticed, above the cochlea we have the semicircular canals. Actually, their number are 3. 1, 2, and 3. These canals are also filled with fluid, and they also contain a hair-like structured cells that contain mechanoreceptors, and they transmit, as you can see, there is a part of the auditory nerve connected to the semicircular canals here that relay information to the brain about the balance of the body. Okay? If you're balanced or not. The balance of the body, the posture of the body. What is the balance of the body? First of all, if you have any relative that experienced an inflammation in the inner ear, the first thing he will have is dizziness, unbalance, maybe he will fall on the ground, because the inflammation will affect the balance in the semicircular canals. Another example about the balance, if you have, if you're playing with a kid, holding him by his hands and rotating him around you, okay, or her. Once you put them on the ground, they will keep feeling dizziness for a while, then they will restore the balance. Why? Because the fluid is still rotating in the semicircular canals, which will be perceived by the brain as if they are still turning or rotating around you. So you will feel, or they will feel, the dizziness after putting them on the ground. This is regarding the balance. This is regarding the balance. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the second sense, okay, which is, we're going to talk here about the skin, which contain many sense receptors. As you can see here, the skin is divided into two parts. The skin is divided into two parts, the dermis and the epidermis. The dermis and the epidermis, which contain many nerve endings. They contain receptors that detect heat, receptors that detect light touch, receptors that detect cold, receptors that detect heavy pressure. So we have many receptors in the skin, the organ, this organ that covers the body from outside, contains a lot of receptors which allow us to perceive our surrounding world. If I give you an object and I ask you to identify this object without looking, okay, your eyes are closed, without looking, I ask you to identify this object. First thing you will do, you will try to touch this object to try to identify it through your hands. Yes? Why? Because the receptors in the skin are not distributed evenly throughout the skin. Such the receptors regarding the light touch and heavy pressure are concentrated in the palms of our hands. In the palms of our hands. In the palms of our hands, which allow us to sense different levels of touch or heavy pressure. We can differentiate between these. Unlikely in the pain, regarding the pain receptors are distributed evenly throughout our skin. What's astonishing and surprising is that our brain doesn't have pain receptors. All our body contain pain receptors that respond to different types of or levels of pain, either chemically or burn or a wound, etc. But our brain doesn't have pain receptors. The brain itself, the nerve tissue in the brain doesn't have pain receptor, even though our brain is responsible of allowing us to feel this pain. So it allows us to feel the pain, but it doesn't have a pain receptor by itself. This is all about the senses in lesson 3 in chapter 33. I hope that I've been useful for you by explaining the information here. Okay, good luck. Study very well. Thank you.